Hello students, today we will be discussing mixtures for chemistry grade 9. Now that we have already discussed elements and compounds, mixtures are rather very simple. There are a few things however that we need to consider and give importance to in this topic. A mixture is a combination of two or more substances that are not chemically combined. The substances in a mixture maintain their individual properties and can be separated using physical methods. Unlike compounds, mixtures can vary in the proportions of their components. They can be made up of elements or compounds. Let me take you back to your childhood days. Do you remember the times when you would go to the beach and you would pick up some sand and mix it in the bucket of the water that you pulled up from the sea and mix them together? What would you notice? You would notice the water and the sand mixing in together and eventually the sand settling down at the bottom, some of the particles still moving around. This kind of solution is called a mixture. On the same hand, you would remember on a hot summer day, if you were ever feeling too lethargic or tired, your mom would make you a glass of sugar and salt water. What are these mixtures called? These are actually in fact mixtures where water and salt or water and sugar combine together to form a solution. Now that brings us to the further classification of a mixture. For coming to your first example, when you went to the beach and you mixed some sand and water together, you noticed that you could always distinguish between the sand and the water. You could distinguish between the particles. On the other hand, if you ever were to drink an energy drink or some salt or water solution or a sugar or water drink, you wouldn't be able to tell the sugar or salt away from the water molecules. This brings us to two types of mixtures based on their uniformity, known as homogeneous and non-homogeneous mixtures. Homogeneous mixtures have a uniform composition and appearance throughout. The components are evenly distributed and cannot be easily distinguished from one another. Example, salt water or even air for that matter. Can we spot out the different gases that exist in the air around us? Can we spot the nitrogen and the oxygen and the hydrogen away from each other in the air we breathe? No. These solutions can be solid, liquid, or gaseous and are formed when a solute, the dissolving agent, dissolves in a solvent, which is the agent that takes in the dissolving agent. Now coming to non-homogeneous mixtures. These have a non-uniform composition and appearance, with the components being visibly distinguishable from one another. For example, if you were to mix sand and water together, or water and oil together, and even a bowl of cereal with milk, you can always tell each particle separate from one another. Which brings us to the last and the most important part of this lecture. One needs to know why and how are compounds actually different from mixtures. When we studied compounds in the previous lecture, there was a huge emphasis on the fact that compounds are formed by chemically bonding one element to another or a group of molecules to another group of molecules. Mixtures, on the other hand, are a physical bond rather than a chemical bond. The ratio of the elements present in a compound are always fixed, and changing that ratio will change in fact the compound that is formed. Mixtures, on the other hand, can be mixed in any proportion whatsoever. Formation of mixture generally produces little or no energy change. However, a chemical reaction to form a compound always leads in either a loss of heat or a gain of heat. Coming to the properties, the physical and chemical properties of a compound differ from its constituent elements because the elements actually lose their properties and their appearances once they form the compound. Mixtures, on the other hand, help the components retain their own properties while being a part of the mixture. In order to separate the components of a mixture, one only needs to take help of physical processes such as filtration, distillation, or even magnetic separation. For compounds, however, chemical processes such as thermal decomposition or electrolysis are required to break down it into simpler substances or compounds.